we're going to look at the practicals of understanding the SAP HANA, the HANA Studio. Just give me one moment. All right. So, so far what we have done is we try to understand a little bit of SAP HANA's architecture, right? So what we will try to understand in today's session is try and understand the SAP HANA Studio, and we will try to understand the provisioning side of SAP HANA. So here I'm going to log into the server. Okay, probably there's some maintenance on this, so let's. Okay. So once you go into the SAP once you go into log into the screen, what you have is a start menu. In the start menu, you have the SAP HANA Studio, right? The SAP HANA Studio is the interface for you for the SAP HANA database and the appliance. All that you could do with SAP HANA, you will be doing it on the SAP HANA Studio, all right? Now this enables you, firstly, to get to the screen, you will have to right click on the connection and say log on. You will have to provide a password, and this will enable you to connect to the system. Okay. Now here I have one system that I'm connected to, but on a normal production system you might have multiple systems that you will be connecting to with regards to development environment, quality, and production. So this is one interface, and you will be able to access all the different systems from this interface itself. Based on which system you're trying to do any of the activities, you will click on the select system here, and then you will choose that system. So here, since I have just this one system, I'm going to click on this system and say OK. All the grayed out objects will be enabled then. Okay, so we're working on the HANA Service Pack 8, the latest that we have. So I will give you a little idea about this specific tool. Now,
hey Emmanuel. Hello.
Yeah.
This is Venkat and Gurupal Syed. Are we in this right class, or do we need to?
Yes. Yeah, we are in the right class, Syed. All right. So,
did we miss anything, or it's totally looks?
Yeah. Let me come back to you. Just we will talk at the end of this session. All right. What I'm going to show.
Okay.
Alright guys, for some of you who have joined this in today's session, I'm just going to do a little background of what we are doing on this session. So for people who are already in here, it might be a little repetitive, but we will try and get that connection. So we have, before we go in and try to understand this, so we've talked about in previous sessions about two major systems. One is you have the OLTP system, which is the ECC system. SAP has two major systems, or any system you will have, any enterprise you will have two major systems. One is called as the OLTP systems, which is basically the online transaction processing system. The other system is the analytical processing system. All right, we call this as OLAP. SAP, being an ERP solution, also has two systems. One is the online transaction processing system, which is called as ECC. ECC stands for Enterprise Central Component, and the OLAP system is the BW system. The analytics is handled within the BW environment. All right. So basically, the understanding is, once the business, during the business hours, the ECC system is where you handle all the daily transactions. So let's say your business is happening between 9 and 6. All your daily transactions will happen during this period of time, and at the end of the day, let's say by 8 p.m., once your business process is completely over, you will be moving that data into the analytical processing system, where you will analyze the data. This process is called as ETL, or you will have extraction specifically for bringing data from ECC into the BW. You have extractors, SAP extractors, pre-built extractors, and all of this, and you will be bringing them into the BW environment and loading them into the BW objects. We will talk about this in the modeling section. And here you have info objects, info cubes, DSOs, and all of these. Now the only catch that we have is that the daily transactions are happening in the day. We are sending the data in the night, and we are reporting after the entire day is complete. So the next day is where you're looking at reports. All right. So there is a delay of at least 12 hours before which we're going to look at reports, a minimum of 12 hours. All right. So the enterprise is moving to a system where we want to look at data at real time. Okay. So they have brought in a new system which is called as the HANA appliance, basically aimed at providing real-time solutions or real-time reports. All right. This is the HANA appliance. The understanding of the HANA system, or the HANA system, basically is an in-memory database which basically stores data on the RAM. Okay, you're not storing data on a hard drive, but you're storing data on the RAM. So we will try to understand the HANA system, and then we'll look at how HANA can be used as a database on underlying the BW application. So we'll look at BW and try to understand BW on top of HANA as well. So for accessing the HANA system, just like how you have when you want to access BW, you have the BW interface, and when you want to access ECC, you have the ECC interface, right? On a similar phase, you have something called as the HANA Studio that we're looking at. That is the interface for SAP HANA. The SAP HANA interface basically consists of these 4 folders: catalog, content, provisioning, and security. All right, and then we'll talk about each of these. For some of us who have already had a little idea about this, this is going to be a little repetitive, so please be patient. So the HANA Studio basically consists of 5 folders. The first folder is called as the backup. Now I've told you that the SAP HANA box is basically on the in-memory database. All right, meaning all this data that we store is on the RAM. And RAM is a volatile memory. So in case you switch off the server, the entire data is lost. All right, you will not have any data on the RAM. So it is not a hard disk that we're looking at. It's basically the RAM on which we're storing data. And we'd be able to push that data from the RAM to a secondary memory storage like a hard disk, where you can take a backup. All right. So the backup can be done onto a secondary disk. So from time to time, we need to take a backup of data that is there on the RAM. And so you have this folder. You can take a backup of the system here. This is usually done by the administrators on HANA, so we will not have to worry about it. The second folder that you have is called as the catalog. Now, the basic idea of catalog is to use multiple schemas. All right. So if you want to bring in data from multiple systems, let's say you want to bring in from ECC, the idea of SAP HANA is it can process the data only if you provide it data. HANA by default is a database, and so it can only process data at real-time speeds. It cannot generate data. You will have to send data from ECC into HANA or BW into HANA or from a database into HANA. So from every system you will have to push data into HANA, and so you have different replication or data provisioning engines, which we can call as extraction that you do here. So the data that you bring into HANA is stored on individual objects in here or individual schemas in here. We call them as catalogs. All right. Now the idea of it is if you have seen the SQL Management Studio, so if you log into the SQL Management Studio, you will find that all of these here are called as databases. So you can go and keep these databases or the data independent with each other because you have databases. So what you have in this database you might not have in the other database. So the data is kept independent. In a similar fashion, on the SAP HANA you have catalogs, and in catalogs you have schemas. Just like in Oracle you have schemas in HANA as well. The schemas basically allows you to keep the data independent of each other. The data across these schemas can be used together in building the different structures in here. Okay. Now if you have a little idea with BW, in BW you have something called as info areas, basically for arranging your objects. In a similar fashion, within SAP HANA you have these objects called as packages. Okay. When you create a package, basically you are trying to create a small info area, a small folder, a namespace, so that you can organize all the objects that you create within your all the objects that you can create here. The folder called as content here allows you to access or create different areas, info areas, or you can call them as folders, or you, in specific terminology within HANA, you call them as packages. Under these packages, you can create multiple models, and these models are called as attribute views, analytic views, calculation views, privileges, procedures, and decision tables. Now since most of you have a little idea with BW, I'm going to also kind of give an analogy between BW or a comparison between BW and HANA. In BW, the objects that you create as characteristics and measures, alright, you call them here as attribute views. In SAP HANA, you will not store data in persistently in individual layers. If you look at BW, you have in the first level you have the persistent staging area, then you have DSOs, specifically write optimized DSOs, then you have standard DSOs, and then you have info cubes, then you have multi-providers, and then on top of that you report, or you have info sets and virtual providers, and on top of that you report. In SAP HANA, the only time that you will load data will be onto the persistence layer. After that you will build views. Now if you have an understanding with database or tables, you understand what is a view. A view is basically to create a structure by combining single or multiple tables. So you have table A and table B. Table A has, let's say, 10 columns and table B has some 20 columns. You will choose, let's say, 5 columns from table A and let's say 3 columns from table B, and there is a condition that you can link both of these tables. You will create a new table or a new structure, or you call it as a view, which has 8 columns. Alright, this does not store data, it is just a structure. It will use the data from A and B. The similar concept that you have in HANA is called as views. When you build a view in SAP HANA, you will be using data across this catalog folder, whatever are the tables that are there. You will use those folders, you'll use those tables to create the views. These views will never hold data. Alright, persistently they do not hold data. They will only use the data that is available on the individual tables. You can choose what columns to use. You can build extra calculated columns based on the tables that are there, but you will never be storing data on any of the views. Data is only stored at one level, that is the persistence level, that is in your catalog folder. From there you will be creating these structures only. Each of these views, so let's say on the BW environment, when you right click on the info area, you can create the objects. Right? On a similar front, when you right click on the package here, you will find that you can create all the objects in here specific to your folder. And these are the objects that you can create under the package. So if you open the package, so you will find that you can create attribute views, analytic views, calculation views, privileges, procedures, and decision tables. And these are the objects that you will be creating in the SAP HANA box. The modeling section within HANA is where you create all of these objects. The reporting section is to allow these objects consumed at the reporting layer, and we will look at that at a later stage, how to integrate business objects and how do you report on top of it. So today's understanding is how do we, or each of these objects that we look at, just let's understand this. In SAP, you will have to use an object. You will have to make sure that it is syntactically correct, and to start using it you need to activate. First you have something called as validate. So if you want to validate your object that you have created, once you created the object, you need to click on the validate button. The validate button basically validates it across multiple rules that are defined in the system. So you have validation rules. So the system will go and validate it across these rules. Okay. It will check for joins, it will check for primary keys, it will check for whether you have defined the semantic layer, all of these. So as we go along, we will look at them. Activate is where you will activate the entire model for the rules and whether the entire thing is correct. Once it activates, then you can start using that object. Redeploy is where you can, in case the underlying tables are deleted previously, you want to go ahead and start using them again, you can redeploy. Mass copy is like a business content, or in case you are having an RDS solution, rapid deployment solution, you want to import some models, so you can do a mass copy of those. Import option that you have here has a lot of functionality. It can import a lot of things. You can import a local file, a delivery unit for transports, or mass import of metadata, or you can import BW models, or you can use data services imports as well. Even exports is the same thing. You could export it to other systems, or you can send it to a different landscape, quality, or production system. Alright, so you will find all of these options in here. Migrate is basically moving it from one language to the other. So when you click on migrate, it allows you to objects after multilingual enablement. Auto documentation, this is one of the biggest headaches in projects, documentation part. So all of this can be auto documented and send it to a PDF file. Switch ownership is to move an object from one owner that you have to a system owner, or you can change the owner. So that option is available here. And the schemas that you create here, if you want to change the authoring, so you can use the change authoring schema. We'll look at all of these options as we go along. In the second section, what you have is manage preferences. All the individual preferences can be set up here. To have an integration with business objects data services, you have configure import server. You can integrate it with the business objects data services system, which is the only ETL to bring data into SAP HANA. Delivery units are the ones you use to do transports across the landscape. To handle and combine multiple transports, you use the delivery units. So you can move multiple packages at the same time. Alright, so you use the delivery units. Schema mapping, so that you can map multiple schemas with the authoring schema. You can go ahead and use the schema mapping. To bring data into the SAP HANA from SAP systems, you have something called as SLT. So you have data provisioning tab, which is directly linked with your SLT system. We will cover this topic when we're dealing with SLT. To generate time dimension data, you have generate time data. SQL console for majority of your uh, objects, you can use the SQL. So you will find the SQL console and documentation. So this is what you have in the modeling section. Depending on whether you are an administrator or you are handling modeling, you can go onto the top of the window. You click on window, you have perspectives. So instead of individual areas, you call them as perspectives. So you can go and click on the perspectives and use. Right now you are in the modeling perspective. You can go into administration or Java or based on what you want to use. Okay, it has a lot of different cases. Now in today's session, we will try to understand how do we bring data into SAP HANA. What are the options that we have for bringing data into SAP HANA? I will show you the basic idea of how to bring data into SAP HANA from individual systems. Now, basically, if you're looking at SAP HANA's architecture, the first layer of the architecture is basically called as the data provisioning layer. We call this as data provisioning. The data provisioning has 4 different major ways of how you can provision data. The first one is called as Sybase, or you can call it as real time, or you can call it as log based replication. The second one, we call this as SLT replication. This is called as SAP's Landscape Transformation Server. To bring data from SAP or SAP systems into SAP HANA, you will use the SLT system. I will talk about that just a moment. Then the third system that you have is Business Objects Data Services, and the fourth system that you have is called as DXC, Direct Extractor Connection. Let me talk about each of these as we go along. So this layer is basically for providing data into SAP HANA. So these are called as, if you're talking about BW or in that terminology, these are more like extracting engines. Okay. Above this you have the in-memory computing engine. In short, we call this as IMCE. Alright. This is the heart of the system. This is where you will have two major blocks. One is your row and column storages. So all your data is stored on the RAM, and that is stored here. Alright. This is your storages. And here the second block that you have is your calculation and planning. So all the calculation and planning engines will be here in this block. Calculation doesn't mean just arithmetic calculation, it also means translation. When you have queries that are fired from different reporting tools, the HANA database should understand it in native SQL. So for that you have the calculation engine, which basically translates it to native SQL. And then you have your planning engines, which will support all financial applications on top of SAP HANA. So this is the second layer, which is the in-memory computing engine. The third layer that you have here is called as the modeling layer. So here is, so what you have here is how you create your views, attribute view, analytic view, calculation view, how you can create procedures, how you can create decision tables, how you can create privileges. All of that is done at the modeling layer. On top of this, you have different reporting tools that you could use. You could use the MS Excel reporting tool. You could use business objects reporting tools. You could use Lumira, or you could use predictive analytics. Alright, these are all the possibilities. There is no proprietary reporting tool for SAP HANA, so any of these reporting tools can be leveraged to use on top of SAP HANA. Alright. Let's try to understand this at even more a better pace. Okay, first thing that we're trying to understand is the data provisioning. The data provisioning basically allows you to bring data into SAP HANA. I told you that SAP HANA is a database. Databases cannot generate data by themselves. You will need to have some kind of an application on top of the database to bring data to it. So there should be some transactions, and that should result in bringing data to the database, or you should go ahead and bring data from the database using a provisioning engine. So here there are 4 different methods. Alright, so let's try to understand each of these methods. We'll start off with SLT. Alright, SAP's Landscape Transformation System, SLT. Okay, this stands for SAP Landscape Transformation System. This basically allows you to go ahead and bring data from SAP ECC or CRM or SRM systems into HANA. Okay, so here you could have, I'll show you how the working happens. This is ECC or CRM or SRM systems. Okay. You have the SLT server, and then you have the SAP HANA box. Okay, 3 different applications here. One is the ECC system from where you're trying to bring the data, SLT server basically for providing data into SAP HANA, and HANA itself as between the SLT server and the SAP HANA box. This is an application and a database. So here you have the DB connection defined. Database connection. Right? Let's say sales or finance or HR or quality or inventory, purchasing, all of these are applications. Now these applications have a schema of tables. Let's say on sales, if you look at it, you have the header table as VBAK and VBUK, the item tables as VBAPN, VBUPN, then you have LIPS, and all of these tables are arranged in a schema. So if there is a change or if there is a sales order created, all of these tables are linked one with the other. Based on the kind of report that you want to bring onto SAP HANA, you are moving individual tables from ECC into SAP HANA. Okay? When you move them into SAP HANA, these are not on a schema. These are not linked one with the other. There is no relationship. So you will, once you bring them into HANA, you will have to relate them one to the other. How they are related, what is the cardinality between them, what is the referential integrity between them, all of that you will have to define. That's what you do at the modeling section. Now here, the way how you access these tables, that you can look at them, you have the SE11 transaction, or you call it as data dictionary. You go and look at them here. Okay, the SLT server is able to support older versions of ECC 4.7 and above. It is even able to support the latest versions of ECC, which are called as ECC 5 and ECC 6. Okay, 4.7 is the R3 version. Previously ECC was called as R3, so you could use the R3 versions here, or you could use the ECC versions for it to move data across into the SAP HANA. The thing about it is this is called as a trigger-based extraction. Okay, and this is a real-time extraction. Meaning every time there is a record created here, you could schedule it such a way that the data can be immediately moved into SAP HANA. And so HANA is always having real-time data in here, so you can do real-time reporting. Now the change here is you call it as a trigger base because it is going to trigger the database, and SLT basically works on the test data migration server concept. Okay, it has a source, it has a target. It doesn't store data anywhere here. It is only used for transformation and moving it through a tunnel into SAP HANA. Alright, the TDMS technology is a technology that is used for moving data across systems where you will handle, let's say, client copies and all of this. You will usually are moving data to a golden system. So you will use test data migration service. So the same concept is used in the SLT service. So whenever there is a trigger, okay, the trigger enables you to go ahead and move the data from the application layers. So you have, let me just give you one more, just give me one quick moment. Alright, the SLT systems look something similar to this. Okay, so you have a source system, you have an LT replication server, and an SAP HANA database. So between both of the applications, you have an RFC connection. Between the application SLT system and the HANA database, you have a database connection. So this is called as a trigger-based extraction. So when there is a trigger here, what happens is the application tables are there. The application tables can be looked through using the data dictionary. And underlying the SAP system, you have a database where you're bringing data from. So this will trigger the tables that are there on the database, and they will be read using the read modules. The logging tables will keep a track of all the tables that are and the data that is being moved across. Alright. This data will be read through into the LT server using the RFC connection. In the LT server, you have controller modules and write modules. The controller modules pick the data from the read modules and write them directly onto the SAP HANA database into the application tables. Data is not stored anywhere inside the LT server. All that you could do here is, in case if you want to handle any transformation, you could write some transformations here to make changes on the data. If you want to add an extra column or you want to filter out a certain set of data, all that can be done here. But this is a trigger base. Your trigger could be, you can mention the table name and you can trigger it to be a real-time trigger, or you can schedule it to run every 4 hours, or you could schedule it to run once in a day. So you could do that. So this is called as a trigger based. Also, the SAP HANA interface has something called as a data provisioning tab. The scheduler program, so if you see here in the interface, sorry. So here you have something called as data provisioning, right? So this will connect directly to the scheduler in here. So you can click on the data provisioning tab and this will connect to your ECC system straight away. Okay, you can schedule, you can click on the load option, okay, and then it will show up all the tables that you want. You can mention a table that you want. Let's say you want to bring in something from EKPO. Okay, you can search for that table directly. You can add this and then you can schedule it. So the entire data can be replicated immediately. So when you're trying to do a replication like this, all that you need to do is click on add, you bring it into the schema and you say finish. Okay. All that the system does is it will go ahead and start loading the data from ECC into the HANA box straight away. Alright. So that is available here. So you can see here EKKO, it will start the extraction and it will load it into the schema that you have inside the catalog. So this is in case if you want to do, this is a trigger that you can do here. This is one way how you can replicate. There is also an option if you go into the LT server. So if you go into the LT server, so this will enable you to go ahead and directly connect. Let's see if I have access. So this will allow you to connect to the LTR, and here actually if you can load this screen, so you will have the access to specify the trigger, how often you want to go ahead and enable the trigger to run. So all of that options can be configured here. It's basically a set of sequence of how you can schedule it, what tables you want to extract. All of that you can go ahead and define inside the LTR system so that you can go ahead and bring the data on. Okay. So you have a sequence of questions like this. So it will show the number of replayed jobs, RFC connection, the database connection. So how often do you want real time or scheduled by interview or scheduled by time? All of that information will be there. So you can set this up so that data can be moved into the SAP HANA box at real time. Okay. So this is basically the idea of using the SLT server. Now the LT server has to be on the latest stack. Okay. So what they usually do is you would want to use the LTR server and you will use this on the same as the so here if you can see, you will need some of these minimum support stuff that you can go ahead and use. So you will go ahead and install these servers with the latest stack and you can use them to bring data. It doesn't mean that the source system also needs to be on the latest stack, not necessary. The LT server has to be on the latest stack. An LT replication server does not have to be a separate SAP system. You can run it on an SAP system with, if you have any system that has the latest stack. So you could create an instance on that and then create the LT server on that. So it doesn't mean you have to install a new server. If it is on NetWeaver 7.02 ABAP stack or 7.20 and the kernel 7.20 extent, so you can go ahead and use that as your LT server. Okay, so you can move data into SAP HANA. So this is a trigger-based extraction. Your triggers can be set up to be real-time, or you could set up a trigger from SAP HANA interface, or you can set it up to extract data from time to time. So all of these are possible. The second kind of, so that is a little about the SLT extraction. Okay, you have the ECC source system on any version, the SLT server, and then you have the HANA database. The second kind of extraction is using business objects data services. Okay. So in this system, you have the ECC, you have business objects data services, and then you have the SAP HANA box. This is business objects data services. Okay. Now here, business objects data services is an ETL tool. What it does is when you're trying to extract, it gives you the ability to bring in data from any system, be it ECC, be it BW, be it flat files, or you can bring data from web services. So you can create different kinds of interfaces. Basically within BODS system you will have to create logical connections between these systems. So I'm talking about a specific scenario where we're trying to bring data from ECC into HANA. So first thing, you create a connection. You will create something called as an SAP data store. This is nothing but a logical connection of ECC into BODS. Okay, and you will create a connection for HANA. You call it as HANA data store. Data store is the naming for creating the logical connection in BODS. So you create an SAP as a source, HANA as a target. The first time around, so in SAP you will have all the details of how to connect into ECC. In HANA Data Store, you have the details of how to connect to HANA system. In the SAP HANA Studio, you have something called as within the quick launch, you have something called as configure import server. The configure import server allows you to configure the information about the repositories and how to connect to the business objects data services system. Okay, so here you can go ahead and define that. And so in the import wizard, you have the import wizard, and here you will go ahead and define the connections of data services. And once you go ahead, the import wizard allows you to connect to data services, and you can have the tag to import the models from ECC. Now how does this work is, HANA, you need a table. Just like normal tables, you need to create a table on the schema, and you need to load the data into that particular table. The loading of the data can be handled by data services, but the table structure need to be defined. Alright, if you want to load data into a table called as Mara, which is my material master, I need to first have the table structure in HANA, and I need to load that data into Mara. The way the system does is, it's a little confusing, but try to understand it. You can ask me questions. So here you have the import option. The import, when you say import, the system connects to the business objects data services system. Within the business objects data services system, you have something called as SAP data stores, right? The logical connection that will help data services connecting to ECC. The HANA system connects to this, will be able to access these properties. Through these properties, it will connect to ECC. So what it means is, instead of connecting directly to ECC, it will use data services connection to ECC, and it will connect to ECC. There it will search for the table called Mara, and it will import that structure through boards into SAP HANA. That's the first step. It will go through the SAP data store and will import the structure in here. So in this, let's say I have defined a particular information of the data store. I click OK, and if I say import, the import option allows me to select selective import of metadata. So I could click here, and when I click, basically this will allow me to bring the connections that I have defined in my data services. So data services has an interface. Okay, so here if I give in, we'll see all of this practically, but basically I'm giving you the theory of how to handle this. So this is the interface for data services. In this I have a connection that is defined for connecting to SAP. So here I have SAP ECC. If you look at the connection details, I am going to connect to this application server, and these are my connection details. Client number 800, system number 77. So all of this information I have here. Okay. If I right click on the system here and go to properties, I will find that information there. This is my application server, this is my instance number. So I will configure it to go ahead and connect to that system. So when I go ahead and try to access a table here using the import server, the import server connects to the data services properties in SAP ECC. Through this it will connect to the ECC system, and then it will access the table that we are searching for. So the Mara table structure will be brought into SAP HANA. I'm specifically emphasizing structure because it will not bring in data. It will only bring in the structure of Mara table. So it will create a table with no data at all. So that is the first step to bring the structure. The second step is to load this structure with data. Now how do I load it? Now I go back to Business Objects Data Services. I will bring in the table Mara from ECC. I will bring in the Mara structure that I have in HANA using this logical connection, and I will define a job here to load from ECC table Mara into the structure Mara in the HANA system, and then I will fill this table with data. So it's a two-step process. First, import the structure from ECC. Second one, to define a job to load the data from using Business Objects Data Services. So this is the step as to how you can go ahead and load data into SAP HANA, okay, using Business Objects Data Services. So it is a two-step process. Everything that we are looking, we will be doing it practically on the systems. You will have exercises as well. But this is the concept of how you will go ahead and move data into SAP HANA. I will also equip you with understanding what repositories are, how to create them, how to move data across as well. The third kind of replication or data provisioning is called as Sybase replication. All right, Sybase replication. Now, if you understand databases, any kind of data that you change or add onto a database, you will find that you will create a log on the databases. Okay. The log files that are created on the databases will be moved into SAP HANA using Sybase replication. Okay. This replication is the only replication that is handled exclusively by SAP. Alright. You will be called on an invite by SAP and they will be handling your replication process. They will set up the replication engine for you to bring data from databases into HANA using Sybase replication. The technology here is that it's going to replicate the log files that you have on the databases that are created. So whenever the application adds new data or changes data, you have the log files created. These are moved into SAP HANA. HANA converts them into transactions and uploads the data into SAP HANA. Now in this is the fastest way of replication. Alright, this is called as real-time replication. But the only downside is it does not have any transformation capability. You cannot transform any data. You will have to directly slip the data from the databases into HANA, but you do not have any transformation capability. Okay, so if you're looking at speed of replication from a database, you can use the Sybase replication, but it's not a very commonly used replication method. Alright, so Sybase replication, which is done for a few customers on invite. So this is the technology that is used in Sybase replication. The fourth one is called as DXC, Direct Extractor Connection. Now, you understand BW systems, right? Now, we have a little idea about what BW systems are. In BW, the basic staging layer that you have in BW is called as the persistent staging area, or in short we call it as PSA. When you extract data from any system, alright, be it ECC or database or flat file or any system, data will be first staged at the persistent staging area. Okay. From here, data will be moved into different objects like info cubes, DSOs, and all of these. But if you go into the ECC system, the transaction within BW to access the workbench is RSA1 transaction code. Okay, If you go into ECC and type in the same transaction code RSA1, you will be able to access the same screens. But that is the native BW on the ECC system. When you're installing, if you have checked the BW, automatically it will install the BW on the ECC system. Though you will not be using it, you will have the option to create it. When you type in RSA1, it will go in there. So within RSA1, if you go into RSA1, you will have a similar BW environment there within the within the ECC system. Okay. You will have a BW environment. You will have persistent staging area. You will have extractors in ECC, and you can move data from these extractors into the PSA. The idea that you have with DXC is on a native BW system or on a native NetWeaver system, you will have the native BW on it. So if you are able to connect this extractor on the ECC system to the BW on the same system, when you run your extraction, the first thing that data will do is it will come to the PSA. This is where data can be staged. If this PSA layer can be set up to be used as the HANA layer, okay, if this is the HANA database, then when you do your extraction, data will come into the HANA layer, alias, or you could say it as the PSA. So the PSA is nothing but the HANA box, so you can directly load into the HANA system. Alright, this is one of the methods to use, not very commonly used, but still used. It is near real time, but handles transformations. Okay, so this is the direct extractor connection option that you can use to load data into SAP HANA. Okay, so on an ECC or NetWeaver system, the native BW allows you to extract data from the extractors onto the persistent staging area, and the persistent staging area itself is called as the HANA database. So you are able to load data from the extractor onto the persistent staging area. This is near real-time replication, has capabilities for transformation as well, but it is a little not so regularly used when you are replicating data. If you look at these four different techniques, you have I told Sybase, we've talked about SLT, Business Objects Data Services, and DXC. Okay. If you look at understanding the speed of replication, this is real time, fastest approach. This is real time. This is near real time. This is also near real time. Okay. One of the rules that you have to understand when you're bringing data into SAP HANA is you want to go ahead and cleanse and transform data before it is actually brought into SAP HANA. You will want to cleanse the data, you want to transform the data, you want to bring only the cleanest possible data into SAP HANA. You don't want to bring the data in here and start kind of cleansing data in here. Alright, so you want to do that in here. So that is handled at the data provisioning layer itself, and you could see that the transformation capabilities are very important because you want to do it outside HANA than inside SAP HANA box. So if you look at and compare it for transformation, Sybase has absolutely no transformation capability. SLT, yes, ABAP knowledge, because you have to work with the include programs in the ABAP. Business Objects Data Services, very high transformation capability. DXC also you have high transformation capability. So for every client you will have to decide whether you want to choose between real-time replication or near-time replication using HANA or using SLT or Business Objects Data Services. So we see that there are a lot of clients who use data services because it has the capability for handling transformation, and it also has the capability for bringing data into SAP HANA at near real time. Okay. SLT is real-time replication, but you can handle transformation, but you need ABAP knowledge to define those transformations because you will have to make changes on the include programs. DXC is near real-time, has transformation capability, but not very commonly used. Sybase is specifically for databases and has no transformation. So if you want to just dump the data into HANA, you could use Sybase when you're using databases. So these are basically the 4 different ways of how transformations can be handled or data provisioning can be handled in SAP HANA. Okay. So any questions, guys? Chandra, Omar, Ravi, Srinivas. Yeah, Omar, go ahead.
Hi, Emmanuel. I was just wondering which type of application do we use? It depends what client has, or client has everything and then we depend on, like, how do we know which, whether to use SLT or...
Each one has a price, licensing price, all right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so depends on the clients on what he wants to use. Sometimes he would want to use the SLT because he already has an existing SAP SLT server. So he doesn't want to buy extra licenses for data services. So he wants to go with SLT. Sometimes he has already data services installed, so he would want to go with that. If you go to SAP and ask them, they will bundle licenses and say you will have to buy LT server licenses and data services licenses. If you remember the editions of software that we've looked at for HANA, you have platform, then you have enterprise edition, right? In the enterprise edition, they bundle it with LT licenses and data services licenses. If it's a non-SAP client who's using it, they'll bundle even Sybase licenses, LT licenses, and data services all together. Right? So it depends on how much the client is willing to spend. And you can choose if he has all of them. Usually they don't. If they have, you can choose which of the data you want to send through data services, which of it you want to send through LT server.
Okay. Well, my second question is, when you mentioned, I think it's called MARA, M-A-R-A, is that a built-in
standard table?
structure?
Yes.
Standard table structure built in. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So for you to easily understand the tables that are there, you could go into Google and type in SAP table and relations, and you get a PDF there. It will tell you individually for each module what are your master tables, what are your transaction tables, how they are related to one another, what are the main fields that are there in each of these tables. So it will give a relation of cross applications as well, how individual tables are connected.
Okay.
Yeah, it's always better if you can take a look at it.
Great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Omar?
No.
Chandra, what's your question?
I just want to know how do we
Can't hear you. Yes, any one of you can hear? Chandra, we can't hear you. Can you type your question on the chat? Can you write schedule jobs in HANA? This option is available on the data provisioning layer. Depends on which kind of scheduling you're talking about. So there are multiple options you can go ahead and use. So you want to schedule procedures, is it? So you could use third party to schedule other stuff like procedures. See here, we are not trying to move data from one level to the other. So if you are using a procedure, so you will use the procedure and you will link it to the calculation view. So anything that is built on it will always pass through that step and then you will get the data. So let's say you define a procedure. Okay. So here you right click on it and then you create a procedure. Okay. The procedure will be used in the calculation view. So when you build your table or when you are building a report on the calculation view, data is already processed. So it is not like BW or other systems where you will have to move data from the procedure into another layer and then you will have to access that. Data is not stored on any of the structures, but when you access the structure, data will be available. So that's why there's no scheduling option in here. The only kind of scheduling that you will have will be to move data to your persistence layer, which is in the catalog. The individual schemas you can bring in there. You have asked me a question as to whether we can go and bring in Excel files from Windows application into SAP HANA. Probably your relation of question is that, right? Okay, then it's fine. Any other questions, guys? Vinay? Vinay, you have any questions? Syed, Naveen, Venkat? We'll take time and I'll talk to you once the session is complete. Omar, are you fine with this time or are you okay with these times? Omar, yes.
Yes, hi guys. Actually, I was wondering if we can have it at 9 p.m. Eastern time. So it will be 7 o'clock at my end. Otherwise, it gets late, and if everybody else is okay, before we had it class starting at 6:30, but or even with you like a 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock is a bit earlier because it's I usually home by 6:05 or so 6:30 actually the best suitable time. If not, then 7 o'clock at the latest, if possible. That would be very helpful for me.
I will try to slowly move this session a little further on so that we could start it by 9:30 p.m. EST. Will that be okay?
And
We'll go until 10:30 or 11 maximum.
yeah, the only thing is, Emmanuel, that like I don't mind having that long session, but on 3 days of the week, I have to do something for half an hour from 8 o'clock to which I have to drop someone, one of my family members, and I cannot have a you know replacement for that. So so that's why I was concerned about the start time. If we can have that you know earlier, that would be great.
Okay, I'll try to figure that out. Not for tomorrow's session, but I'll work through getting to the time slots that you mentioned. All right?
Sure. At 6:30, that means you know 8:30 Eastern time, or 9 o'clock, which is 9 o'clock Eastern time, which will be 7 o'clock at my end. So if either of them, that would be really good.
All right, Omar.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for my opinion.
Hey, Nageshwar, you will need, if you're using data services, you will need at least basic knowledge on data services. You need to understand what repositories are, how we would move and schedule jobs to move data from ECC into data services. So you will need that understanding. We will do that in these sessions. All right. So we'll look at how to load data using business objects data services. So do not worry. You will go through those sessions of understanding data services as well. Syed and Venkat, can I have your phone numbers?
Yeah. You can. Where can I type in?
Yeah, go ahead, or else give your number.
Okay, I'm typing.
Any other questions, guys?
Did you get it?
No. Oh yeah, I got it, yeah. All right. So I'll see you all tomorrow at the same time. In case there's a change of schedule, we will be sending you an email beforehand. All right. All right, guys. Thanks for attending this session. We'll see all of you in tomorrow's session. Okay. Bye, guys.